those in favor? Motion is carried. And I need a motion to adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting of April 10th. Councillor Lamb, Councillor English. Those in favor? Motion is carried. And the special council minutes of April the 17th. Councillor Saul, Councillor English. All those in favor? Motion is carried. And the special council minutes of April the 20th. Councillor English and Saul. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Is there any business arising from the minutes of the regular meeting of April the 10th? Councillor Nixon.
Your Worship, just wondering where we're at with follow-up to the Fortis visit. Were we writing a letter to advocate for Fortis moving the agenda forward to get propane cost, the natural gas cost? Do we have any action that we had to do on that?
I was under the impression that they were doing that as a matter of course, that they were doing it and submitting it to the Utilities Commission. And I think that it's going to take some time to go through that process, but that's the impression I'm under, is that it's all moving forward. I don't think that there's any action required on our part, but maybe as well you can follow up on that.
Yeah, sure, I'll look into it.
Thank you.
Is there anything other business arising from the minutes of the April 17th meeting? Business arising from the special meeting of April 20th. And moving into 5A, we have development services and development variance permit for 1121 First Street West and we've got the side issue again.
Well, Council, just quick as best you can. I have a presentation. This is a development variance permit application at 1121 First Street West. Let me get a drawing up here. It is for a single-family dwelling located at the corner of First and Wales. The proposal is to reduce the rear yard setback from 7.5 to 6 meters, reduce the parking requirement from 4 stalls total to 3 stalls, and increase the minimum driveway width off the lane from 6 meters to 7.8 meters. Approval of these variances will permit an exterior renovation of the house and the addition of a small 2-bedroom second dwelling unit of approximately 866 square feet. The parking variance is more of a technicality. If this were to be considered a suite, only 3 stalls would be required. However, because the suite is not technically located within the dwelling, it's attached to the rear of the dwelling, it is considered a second dwelling. Staff have received 2 public comments. Both were concerned primarily about the impact of parking and snow clearing due to the proposal. Staff do acknowledge that there are impacts of parking due to additional dwellings. The parking being proposed of 3 stalls is the same as if it were considered a secondary suite. The proposed dwelling unit fits within the size of if it was a secondary suite. So essentially staff are supportive, remain supportive of the variance. I think this will be a perennial issue that council will be pressured to balance the impacts of parking versus sensitive infill and assisting with the city's housing demands.
Does anybody have a motion here to
I can bring that motion forward, Your Worship. The development variance permit DVP 2017-14 be approved for issuance.
Motion by Councillor Duke, seconded by Councillor Nixon. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Nixon.
This is another example of somebody who's trying to help our housing situation, and it looks like a very nice addition.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Wendell.
Yeah, I'm happy to see that the applicant has worked with staff to come up with, a housing solution and managed to come up with, again, like a solution that works to create another unit in town.
Any other comments? All those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. Just a couple of quick announcements from myself. I want to thank everybody that was involved with the organization of the SOGA convention and council members and staff that attended. It was a great week for the community, a lot of positive comments, and I'd especially like to thank Cindy Floyd for all the extra work that she did in helping organizing and running it. It was a good event for the community. I also want to give out congratulations to the skate park with their announcement of starting construction, and looking forward to that project being a great addition to the community. And I was unable to attend throwing the first pitch for minor ball last night because of the thunder and lightning, and they canceled the opening ceremony, but it's great to see that now spring and summer are officially on the way here because baseball has started. Yeah, thank you. We're in 9A, Clean Air Bylaw. Councilor Coles.
Your Worship, I'll bring forward that Clean Air Bylaw number 2186 be adopted.
Motion by Councilor Saul, seconded by Councilor English. Discussion on the motion? Councilor Dixon?
Just, Your Worship, it's good to see this being adopted. It's recognizing that we're including vaping and cannabis in our bylaw, so we're right up to date.
One bylaw we're taking cannabis out, and one bylaw we're adding it in.
Exactly.
Any other comments or questions on the motion? All those in favor? Motion carried. Dollar cost charge. Councilor Wendell.
Your Worship, I'll bring that forward. 9B, that the City of Revelstoke Development Cost Charge Amendment Bylaw number 2218 be adopted.
Motion by Councilor Wendell, seconded by Councilor Saul. Discussion on the motion.
Just for background, this is adding the Thomas Brook and Camosi Bench areas to the development cost charge map. So it's just basically amending to add these two areas and fit it in with our existing development cost charge bylaw.
So if there's opportunities to charge development cost charges, we can now do it. Any other comments or questions on the motion? All those in favor? Motion carried. MTI?
I'd be happy to bring that forward, Your Worship, that the Municipal Ticket Information System Amendment Bylaw number 2225 be read a first, second, and third time.
Motion by Councilor English, seconded by Councilor Sauls. Discussion on the motion.
Just a little bit of background, the MTI bylaw requires an update, and as it's evolving, this is what we're doing.
And this has to do with the Clean Air Bylaw, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
Any other comments or questions on the motion? All those in favor? Motion carried. Tax rate bylaw.
Your Worship, I'll bring forward that the 2018 tax rate bylaw number 2223 be read a first, second, and third time.
Motion by Councilor Nixon, seconded by Councilor Sauls. Discussion? Comments? All those in favor? Motion's carried. We're on to 10A.
Your Worship, I have a conflict to declare for items 10A as well as 10B. They're both involved the same proponent due to business relationship.
Councilor Leonard recuses himself. Who would like to move forward this one?
Your Worship, I'll bring forward that the Mayor and Director of Corporate Administration be authorized to sign the highway use agreement for a portion of Big Bend Highway accessed at 4605 Highway 23 North to the BC Interior Museum, Forest Museum Society for the purpose of access to the Riverside Forest Walk project located at 4805 Highway 23 North.
Motion by Councilor Saul, seconded by Councilor English. Discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Motion carried. Councillor Solz, you got?
I'll bring forward that the mayor and director of corporate administration be authorized to sign the agreement for the lease of Columbia View Park located at 4605 and 5205 Highway 23 North to the BC Interior Forest Museum Society for the purposes of operating and maintaining the park, a forestry museum, and construct an on-leash dog walk loop and trail network to link the Riverside Forest Walk project located at 4085 Highway 23 North.
Motion by Councillor Solz, seconded by Councillor English. Discussion on the motion? Councillor Nixon?
Just, Your Worship, it's nice to see these museums moving forward with projects this year. They've been doing much better the last 2 years with the increase in tourism in town, so it's nice to see this.
Thank you. Any other comments? Motion's on the floor. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Can somebody let our councillor in? We're on to the engineering report for Environmental Advisory Committee recommendation on the Wandering Wheels tenure referral. I think it would be appropriate to ask staff to give us a presentation. Oh, that's you?
I know I don't look like I'm engineering, but today,
You all.
I would never say that.
hi, thanks. Through your worship, so in front of you, you have the report from the EAC and the EDC regarding the Wandering Wheels tenure application. I think it's important to remember that the city is simply the referral agent on this application. We do not make the decision. We have the opportunity to provide feedback, and I'm mentioning this because I think over the last several days I've received several calls from different community members, and they were concerned about this specific application, and so I just want to reiterate that in terms of this application, we are really the referral. So we received this referral earlier this year, and in April, City Council, as you know, you referred it to both the Environmental Advisory Committee and the Economic Development Commission. Those referrals went forward. Both the Economic Development Commission and the Environmental Advisory Committee took a look at the referral. They held a lot of discussion. There was a lot of discussion and thought put into the recommendations. I think it's also important to note that the recommendations that have come forward from those committees were not unanimous. So as part of that discussion, there was a lot of people who felt that some of those recommendations were really important and others who did not. So it was not a unanimous, the recommendations that were put forward were not unanimous. Another important piece to note in this is that the overall discussion had actually more to do with land use than the Wandering Wheels tenure application. So in front of you, we are looking at the Wandering Wheels tenure application, but a good portion of the discussion that was going on at both of those committee meetings were about overall concerns about land use and the pressures currently on land use, and the need to potentially take a look at what we are doing in terms of Crown land referrals and Crown land use, and how to consider those pressures. So that those are pieces that I think are important to note. The recommendations that did come out, the first two are from the Environmental Advisory Committee, and the third one is from the Economic Development Commission. They're clearly related to both the Wandering Wheels application as well as the Wandering Wheels application and the overall land use planning concerns. But when I spoke to the Front Counter BC, one of the things that they said quite clearly is that in terms of the application, the preferred process here is anything specific to the application they would like to see come forward in that form. Any greater concerns that you may have or that the community may have in terms of overall land use planning process, if we have those concerns, that should be coming forward as through a letter or some other process to go to the province overall. Okay, so they're saying that yes, we understand that there's some concerns coming forward, and that these concerns might be coming forward because of the Wandering Wheels application, but if there is concerns about greater land use planning, please bring that forward to the province, because that's not their position to take, or that's not their job to do. So those are kind of the different pieces that I think are important to mention. Just a point of clarification, in the report there's reference to other tenure applications. This should actually be there are other tenures, so there's currently other tenures on that land, on the Cartier land. the application process is not there. If there is a recommendation regarding a moratorium on land use, it wouldn't necessarily affect the current tenure. The one tenure that might be affected is actually the enduro race, because they reapply for that application comes forward multiple times. Thank you.
And before entertaining a motion, I believe that the proponent from Wandering Wheels is here, and give him an opportunity to speak to council as well.
Thank you, Your Worship, distinguished council members, for allowing me to speak to you today. I'd like to start by just giving you a brief background of my business. So Wandering Wheels has been operating here in Revelstoke for the past 5 years. We offer guided tours, lessons, skills clinics, and kids camps for locals and tourists alike. We currently hold a license of occupation land tenure for many trails in the Revelstoke area, including Mount McPherson, Boulder, as well as many trails in Golden, Salmon Arm, and New Denver. We are also supported by all of the local cycling associations who manage these trails through partnership agreements with Rec Sites and Trails BC. Myself and every one of my team members are passionate community members who go above and beyond our requirements in giving back to the trails that we ride. We work tirelessly as volunteers for the Revelstoke Cycling Association and as trail stewards in general. We take pride in maintaining and upgrading both RCA trails and other trails which are not currently being managed or maintained by any user groups. You may remember an initiative that I took on back in 2015 called the Martha Creek Makeover. Through various fundraising efforts, we collected almost $30,000, which went directly into much-needed maintenance for that popular trail. In partnership with RST BC, we organized trail work priorities and created contracts for a professional crew to go in and complete the work. As you can imagine, this was a huge effort on my part, and it ended up being a great success. This is just one of dozens of examples of the passion for trails, trail stewardship, volunteerism that me and my team possess. Another brief example is the infamous windstorm of 2017, which blew over well over 200 trees across the trails. I personally organized and led groups of volunteers who put in dozens, if not hundreds of hours of time into clearing out the trails. Another huge undertaking, and one which I was actually recognized with a Spirit of Revelstoke award for this past winter. Your Worship, it's no secret that mountain biking and mountain bike tourism is one of the leading economic drivers in our city during the summer months, and I think it's fair to say that my business directly contributes a large portion of that economic benefit. In regards to my current tenure amendment application and the council report in front of you today, I'd like to make a few points clear. The original submission date of this application was actually March 9th, 2017, not February 13, 2018, as indicated in the City Council report. The reason for this date discrepancy is that I was asked by Erin Keith, the authorizations officer at Front Counter BC, to amend some of the information in my management plan. For example, she asked me that I note that we would not use the trail during or immediately after periods of wet weather. A totally reasonable and agreeable request. So that date of February 13th, 2018 is actually just the most recent update to my management plan. I've been working very closely with Erin Keith, as well as Front Counter BC Section Head Sharon Daly and Rec Officers Marcy Bennett and Danielle Lorenz over the past year to dial in my management plan, ensuring that key concerns from all stakeholders have been addressed. I have known for months that I will not be receiving tenure for the Joss Mountain Trail, and for months I have been led to believe that I will be receiving the tenure for the Mount Cartier Trail. This City Council referral is but one in a long list of 40 to 50 stakeholder referrals, and it is the last one outstanding. The council report states that there are 3 other existing applications on the Mount Cartier Trail, and that is not the case, as Nicole mentioned. The other 3 tenures have already been awarded. Selkirk Tangiers has a tenure that they are not currently using. The BC Enduro Series runs a once-per-year race down the trail. And the third, Shred Sisters, is a guiding operation based in Canmore who is also not using the trail. I know for a fact that the owner and operator of Shred Sisters has not even ever ridden the trail, so I wonder, how could she possibly have an adequate management plan, emergency response plans, trail maintenance plans in place? Yet she applied for and was awarded a license of occupation land tenure for this trail, the exact same tenure that I'm currently applying for. And I'd like to ask the council, did you receive referrals for any of those 3 applications? I would now like to address some of the key concerns from the EAC and EDC as outlined in the council report. We'll start with some points from the Economic Development Commission. The report states that, and I quote, the original use of the trail was a hiking trail, and currently hiking heli biking activity on the trail is making the trail less user-friendly to hikers. This is simply untrue. The Mount Cartier Trail is a designated, non-motorized, multi-use trail. It was originally built in the early 1920s as a pack horse trail to access a forestry lookout near the summit. Later in the 1900s, after new fire detection technology came along, the trail remained around for public use, which was traditionally hiking. With the recent popularity boom in mountain biking, a new form of trail use has been emerging. This is not a case of mountain bikers trying to take over a hiking trail. It's simply a natural occurrence with the growth of a popular new sport. As far as making the trail less user-friendly, let me ask you this. Would you enjoy hiking across steep side hills with hundreds of roots trying to push you off the trail? How about climbing over, under, or around hundreds of downed trees? Over the past 5 years, I have spent more time hiking, riding, and maintaining this trail than anyone else. In the past 3 years, I have personally organized and led 6 heli-assisted trail maintenance days, each with 8 to 12 workers per day. We address drainage issues, we build bridges to provincial rec standards over small streams, we build small reroutes around low-lying swampy areas, and we re-establish bench cut into the side hill where years of neglect has seen the trail tread diminished. We also brush the trail annually for better sight lines and added safety, and each year we clear out an average of 100 plus downed trees across the trail. I wouldn't call that work making it less user-friendly for hikers. The EDC notes concerns about limited parking and lack of washroom facilities. These concerns have been addressed in my management plans. Washroom facilities are not needed as we are using the trail for only 3 to 4 hours at a time. If people have to urinate while on the trail, they will do so in the bush. No different than any public user, any heli skier, or any forester who spends their days out in the mountains. Parking will not be an issue as our guided groups are flown up by Glacier helicopters located approximately 5 kilometers west of town and then picked up at the end of the day by our shuttle truck who meets us at the bottom of the trail. We are parked there for no more than 10 minutes at a time. Oftentimes we just ride right back to town. My management plan also states that during busy days when parking areas are filling up, we will find alternative parking so as not to displace the public. The EDC also notes concerns about the impacts on wildlife of additional heli tour operators using the trail. As a tenured operator, we would adhere to the provincial wildlife guidelines for backcountry recreation and tourism in BC. These guidelines can be found on pages 7 and 8 of my tenure management plan. Similar guidelines are listed for the prevention of spreading invasive species, also on page 8 of my management plan. As I'm sure you're aware, riders can simply charter a helicopter and get dropped at any time to ride this trail unguided. When they ride with us, at least they are educated about these wildlife and invasive species policies and guidelines. They are also educated about responsible trail riding etiquette, including riding in control at all times, yielding the right-of-way to all other users, and riding slowly around corners so as not to skid or slide. The EDC also notes the potential impacts on residents' water quality with the additional usage. As noted previously, we are working on improving the trail more and more each year. With new bridges being built, as well as the fact that having a guide tell riders when they should be walking over or around water courses, there should be no additional impact to residents' water quality. I would also argue that any additional usage of the trail by my business will be very minimal. If I am unable to take riders up there, they will still charter a helicopter and go up on their own, which could be cause for even more safety and environmental concern. Some key points from the Environmental Advisory Committee include impacts on wildlife, greenhouse gas emissions, erosion, sedimentation of alpine streams, etc. Many of these concerns have already been discussed here today, and as far as greenhouse gas emissions go, I think it's fair to say that even one single day from any one of the heli ski operations in town would be roughly equivalent to the emissions put out by my business in an entire season. The EDC notes that a local land use or access management plan is required to address escalating land use pressures and environmental concerns. I am 100% in agreement with that statement, and that is why I have already been in discussions with CSRD Rec Officer Danielle Dornick about working together and cooperating with all other tenure holders and heli operators, as well as several other stakeholders, including the public, to create a working land management plan working management plan for the Mount Cartier Trail specifically. This plan is in its very initial stages, but the idea behind it is to level the playing field for all users, to develop thorough and adequate maintenance plans, which include financial contributions from all commercial operators, including unguided heli charters, to limit the number of daily riders on the trail, and even to designate 1 to 2 days per week to be free of any heli activities on the trail. I look forward to working closely with the provincial land managers on this plan, and I look forward to being able to contribute even more maintenance to this world-class trail than ever before. Lastly, the EAC notes that they do support the guided use of alpine trails with appropriate mitigations to address stewardship, invasive plant control, trail maintenance and monitoring, and conservation. I believe that I have addressed all of these points here today, and each of these points is also addressed in my management plan. In closing, I would like to ask that you support my tenure amendment application for the Mount Cartier Trail based on the information in my management plan, based on my unquestionable trail stewardship ethos, and based on the relatively low overall impact of my commercial operation. Thanks for your time.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Matthew while he's here? Thank you.
Yes, I'll bring this item forward, starting with 10AC number 1. I move that the Silva Motion Resourcing Collaborative Planning on Provincial Crown Land be supported by submitting a letter to Ministry of Forest, Lands, Natural Resource Operations, and Rural Development requesting that the Ministry take a leadership role in supporting a community-based collaborative land use planning process that will address escalating and competing recreational land use pressures on Mount Cartier and surrounding area.
Second for that motion, Councilor Nixon. Discussion on the motion.
Yeah, Your Worship. By way of bringing this forward, I guess in my thinking, I want to reiterate some of the comments that have been made prior to this. I think there's a pretty, my feeling is there's a broad consensus that we do need more land use planning around here. And I know that if you can see in your package, that's also supported by the CSRD motion that's put forward and has been put forward many times over the years. I feel that as a council, we've had these issues come up several times over the years where there's some sort of a proposal, an application, be it logging over at Mount McPherson, and in one way or another it ends up in our lap. You know, the end result is that we find that we don't have the jurisdiction, we don't have the ability, no matter how hard we lobby and try, the decisions are made elsewhere. And I do want to also emphasize another point that was made here is that this is a referral. We're not sitting down here today deciding what's happening here, and we just don't have the ability to have substantive involvement in these things. And this, I think this would be a real benefit going forward if this would be happening. The second part of that is that after the last provincial election, there has been a lot of, there's been some more discussion at the ministerial level about getting involved locally, and hopefully that would mean returning more local control to the community. So I am supportive of, I guess, part 1 of the motion here.
Any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Motion carried.
All right, and point 2, I'll bring this forward for discussion, that a recommendation be made to the province for a moratorium on any new tenure applications or approvals until completion of the proposed planning process.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Councilor Nixon. Discussion. Councilor Duke.
I'm not in support of this. I'm not in support of putting a memorandum, waiting for a proposal planning process that we don't know how long it's going to take. I think it's not in the best interest of the community.
I am in agreement that I do not support this motion. I think that it has far-reaching implications than what we're talking about, and I'm not going to support that. Councillor English.
I'm not going to be supporting that motion either, to further the reasons that you gentlemen just spoke of.
Councillor Sauls.
Your Worship, I'm in the same boat. I will not support this. I think when we see the 10-year applications or the 10 years that are already on there that are not being used, putting a moratorium on doesn't make any sense.
Your Worship, I think the intent, the discussion at the Environment Committee, both the Environment Committee and the Economic Commission spent a lot of time on this issue, but at the Environment Committee, I think the moratorium really applies to this referral just on Mount Cartier. And we had Jeff Honig come from Selkirk Tangiers and talk to us about they hold tenure up there on Mount Cartier, and they're not currently using it. And what's happening around tenure is if something goes wrong, whoever's holding tenure is responsible. The fingers start pointing at whoever's holding tenure. And they were not unanimous about wandering wheels. Like, they recognized that there would be stewardship and education around the environment and washing of the bike wheels. But the point is that there is a tenure already held by Selkirk Tangiers, another local company, that the ministry should be looking at before they give out any more shared tenure on that mountain. And the other thing that was mentioned was the matrix. The ministry has a matrix of conflict for when you have biking and hiking and how that affects that trail. Well, there is no matrix developed, no data on heli hiking interfering with hiking. I heard a good idea about looking at land planning to look at maybe a couple days a week where it's just for hiking and not biking. Like, that's solution-focused thinking. But I think the moratorium was specific to the ministry needs to look at Selkirk Tangiers. Are they using their tenure? What's their plan for their tenure before they give this tenure to another local company?
Your Worship, Councillor Nixon, I do appreciate the points, but the wording that's come forth in this motion doesn't indicate that. It's very broad, so this could be easily interpreted as somebody wants to do a kayaking tenure or horseback riding tenure or something like that, and that our standing position is going to be no, not until we complete this process, the collaborative planning process. As Council has taken a look at the background of the various motions that have come through the regional district, and they date back to, I think the first one was 1989, so we could be waiting a long time. Hopefully not. Hopefully something will be coming forward sooner than that, but however, it's something that's out of our control, and we don't control that. So I think the wording of point 2 as it stands is far too broad, and if the committee had intended to have a specific meaning regarding, for example, this application, that it should have been worded differently. A second to that, it's again one of those situations where it's so far out of our control. One of the points that the proponent made when he was talking here today was that other tenures have been awarded, but we were not consulted on those things, and that's sort of the kind of, well, who knows, what's going to happen next time something comes around. So, and again, because we're not in control of that process, and that this is, largely, almost entirely, I believe, except for a small bit, as I've been led to understand, outside of city limits, I don't know how those things are being administered. So, to summarize, I just think point 2 is far too broad.
So you're speaking against the motion?
Yes.
Councillor Nixon.
Just one more point, Your Worship, on the tenures. There's obviously a problem with tenures because the Selkirk Tangiers tenure never came in front of this council, and that was in 2014 at election time.
Motion's on the floor to recommend a moratorium. Is there any more discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Against? denied. So I'd like to go to number 3.
I'll bring that forward for your discussion, Your Worship. Point 3, I move that the key consideration points provided by the Economic Development Commission in their Wandering Wheels referral be included in the letter to the province.
Is there a seconder for that, Councillor Nixon? Motion by Councillor Lund. Councillor Nixon, your comment.
Just really important that one of the comments that was made by the Economic Commission was about people that receive their domestic water at the base of this mountain, that be considered and monitored by the province.
Any other comments on this motion? Councillor Duke.
I feel for the proponent because we see this happen a fair bit where someone comes in here that's running a business in Revelstoke, and to me it seems like they got snared in the bureaucratic trap, right? Where there's other people that didn't have to go through the process, and all of a sudden it lands here at this table. And this table carries a significant amount of weight in one letter. So we say, yeah, we support the applicant, or no, we don't support the applicant, and that can be enough to make the process go through or have the tenure denied. I am not in support of this motion because I feel that the way it's worded, by putting that in there, not being supportive of this motion, that it's going to make this applicant not have their tenure approved. And I believe that they are doing well for the community. The trail is much better because of the work that they've done on the trail, and it's going to draw more people to the community for tourism. So I'm not in support of this motion.
Any more discussion on the motion? I am going to support the motion. And we send out to committees for referral and for comments, and I think that the proponent has put together a very good proposal addressing a lot of these concerns, and it's up to the ministry to look at. These are what the concerns of the community has brought forward to council through its committee referral process. We think that the proponent has answered them successfully and done the mitigation to look after these concerns. So it's up to them to go through it all. But we've asked the committee for comments, and we are either going to pass those comments along, which is what I'm in favor of doing. But I think that the proponent has, from what I've read and from listening to him speak here, I think that he has done a good job of answering those concerns, and that's up to the ministry again to go through both sides of that and see if there's enough mitigation to look after those concerns. Any more comments or questions on the motion? All those in favor? Against? Councillor Duke votes against. The motion is carried. Thank you. Councillor Leonard, do you have where we are going to?
Oh, I did forward a question to staff about that. I do, because this is a package that has several different items in it, a few of which I have conflict on, the majority of which I don't. We seem to have had two processes, one where we were separating them out individually, others where we were doing it as a block, and so that was my question, and it looks like we're trying to seek an answer to that now.
Question mark, and I'm asking if you're reminding you think that you have a conflict with
So, Your Worship, through the chair, because we referred this to another committee to make the decision on how to award the money, I believe you're okay to stay in the room.
Okay.
It's just a block.
Okay.
Your Worship, I'll bring forward that the 2018 grant and aid in the amount of $15,811 as recommended by the Grant and Aid Subcommittee be approved.
Motion by Councillor, seconded by Councillor English. Discussion on the motion.
Your Worship, we have some money left in the grant and aid in case we have any other groups that do come forward in need this summer.
Any other comments or questions on the motion? Thanks for the committee for going through all this stuff and making these recommendations to us. All those in favor? Motion carried. Staff reports, financial statements, we have a presentation.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Councillors. My name is Angie Spencer. I'm a partner with BDO. and we are your independent auditors. And I'm just going to give an overview of the audit findings. So Tanya's just handing out, this is my audit report to you that concludes any matters that I need to bring to your attention as part of our audit. It covers the areas that we focused our audit on and any of our conclusions. Just in summary, to shorten it, there weren't any significant findings that need to be brought to your attention. There weren't any material misstatements to the financial statements, and as a result, we've issued what we consider an unqualified or clean audit opinion on the financial statements as at December 31st. I'll just quickly go through the highlights of the financial statements, the balance sheet and the income statement. So I believe that those are in your packages. Page 3 to the financial statements, that is our independent audit report. And as I mentioned, we are issuing an unqualified audit opinion. So the financial statements are free of material misstatements. Over to page 4 is the balance sheet. As at December 31st, cash is sitting at about $6.9 million, and that's largely due to an operating surplus being offset by a significant number of tangible capital asset purchases and also some money transferred into portfolio investments for reserves. Taxes receivable, that increased slightly over last year, and that was in line with the overall tax increase for the year. Accounts receivable sitting at $3.4 million. That was up by about $2.2 million, largely due to 1.3 of the provincial funding for the Big Eddy project upgrades, and 1.2 represent the Thomas Brook funding and amounts that will be collected from residents for their water and sewer upgrades. The other assets included in the balance sheet are fairly similar to prior year. In terms of liabilities, accounts payable increased by about $1.6 million. This is due to several construction projects on the go around year-end. So $800,000 of that related to performance deposits from Mackenzie Village in Ramada and an additional construction holdback. Deferred revenue is up to $2.8 million, up from $1.3. That increased by 1.5 made up of several deferred grants, which will be spent in following years, as well as an increase in developer contributions related to the increase in construction in the area, and a lot of that related to Mackenzie Village and Ramada as well. Long-term debts, there was just over $700,000 of new loans taken up during the year and repayments of $1.3 million. Overall tangible capital assets are sitting at $68.3 million. That increased this year. There was about $7.4 million of capital additions during the year. These additions include 2.7 of upgrades to the Big Eddy water system, $1 million related to the Thomas Brook infrastructure improvements, roundabout, and several other upgrades. So overall accumulated surplus is sitting at $74 million. Sorry, we're on page 4. I'm just going to flip now to page 5.
5, okay, sorry.
Okay. So page 5 is the consolidated statement of operations. Overall taxation revenue is up over last year. That was due to the tax increase, as well as increase in overall property values. Government grants and contributions by developers and property owners went up significantly over last year. That was overfunding due to capital upgrades such as the Big Eddy, the roundabout, crossing upgrades, and Thomas Brook infrastructure upgrades. Contributions by developers and property owners includes the resident contributions towards Thomas Brook and additional deferred development contributions recognized during the year. User fees and other service charges continue to increase as there's more connections during the year. And other revenues fairly consistent with prior years. So overall revenues are sitting at just over $30 million. Expenditures overall were at $20 million. Overall, if you take out the loss on the Housing Society, which was taken off the books last year, an overall increase in expenses of about 5%. So general increase in maintenance costs, snow plowing, recreation programs, and events in the community. So overall annual surplus is sitting at $9.6 million. That is before taking into account tangible capital assets that were purchased during the year. So I will propose to go through the remainder of the financial statements. That covers the notes to the financial statements, which just provide more detail on the numbers that we've just talked about in terms of the income statement and the balance sheet. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you for going through this with us. It looks like we're really, really rich, and it's just really, really important to tell the community that we're resilient, and all that cash extra is not sitting in a drawer. It's sitting in asset management. There's many capital projects that have gone through in the last couple of years, and that makes our bottom line grow for our assets at the bottom. But, you know, I don't want the citizens to think that they're being overtaxed any more than they already think they're being overtaxed. That money has come in, and the only borrowing was $700,000, and that was for Thomas Brook, which was a local service area, correct? And those residents will be paying back that loan. So quite a resilient statement, right?
I would agree with that statement. And when you look, around the community and how much infrastructure improvements have been happening, when you take into account Big Eddy and the Thomas Brook projects, significant amount of capital improvements, which isn't represented in that number.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the great data in the report that I've got on my iPad. I'm just concerned, maybe I'm looking at this right here. That's now for my report.
Okay, that is a typo there on the footer. My apologies.
I just want to make sure that I've got the right stuff in front of me.
The data in there is not related to the city of Salmon Arm.
Perfect. That's what I wanted to hear.
Some poor clerk.
As long as we're not paying for the fountain.
Yeah, I would echo Councillor Nixon's comments, and that people can look to the statement of cash flows, which is in the report there, if they want to have a more accurate statement of what's the ins and the outs of the organization.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you very much for joining us today.
And thank you to Tanya and to Shiana for all their help with us conducting the audit this year.
Thank you.
Your Worship, I'll bring forward that the city's draft consolidated financial statements for the year ended December 31, 2017 be approved.
Motion by Councillor Stoll, second by Councillor Nixon. Any the discussion? I want to thank Councillor Nixon for those comments, clarifying points, and also would like to go and thank Tanya and Shiana and all the other staff and department heads that have put this all together, and it's a very interesting read. I encourage the community, especially if you can't sleep at night, you should really go through this, so it'll help you. Any other comments? Did we do the vote on the motion? No. Any other comments? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Development Services, we have a presentation. This is for 113 7th Street East.
Doing good.
Thank you, Your Worship. This application is a heritage alteration permit for 113 7th Street East for the construction of a two-story accessory building. Do a proposal. There. The structure has a 770 square foot footprint. The total floor area is just over 1,100 square feet, as it has a second story on it. A similar application for a slightly larger structure was denied by council on October the 14th, 2017. Since then, the applicant has reduced the footprint of the structure by 27 square feet, or 3%. The applicant has changed the design slightly, pushed the structure back from the road, added a balcony to the second story, and increased the roof pitch. You can see the previous application way back in here. There. Staff still assert that the structure is oversized for the property. The massing of the proposed structure is out of context with the heritage character called for in the heritage area policies of the OCP. Council agreed with this in the previous proposal, which they denied in last August. This proposal, let's get a site plan here. This proposal, staff assert, further reduces the usability of the lot, removing the rear yard altogether. The previous proposal had the structure somewhere in this area. It's now pushed back here, taking up the entire rear yard of the property, and requires a large hard surface driveway as well, now off of the street. Although the structure does not exceed the maximum lot coverage of the R2 zone, the Revelstoke Station Heritage Protection Area policies does allow council to further consider the impact of built form and design and its overall impact on neighborhoods. The applicant has provided a presentation, which I believe is coming up next, which appears to outline examples of a number of older, poorly designed accessory structures, as well as some nicer structures in our community, accessory structures. There's a number of them along Mackenzie Avenue in the residential area. There's a few that are about 1.5 story. I caution council to understand that all of those nice examples are on properties. They represent accessory buildings with mass that are in harmony with their principal buildings. Those properties are all larger lots. They're at least 1.5 to 2.5 times larger than the applicant's lot. And none of those buildings are larger than the proposed structure that the applicant is proposing on a much smaller lot today. The applicant has supplied a couple of opinions from other professionals in the area. These focus mostly on design of the building. Staff are not too concerned with the design. We are more concerned with the second story and the massing and the impacts of that to the neighborhood. This proposal is roughly 75% of the footprint of the house itself, and similar to height as well, about 75% of the height of the house. And that's about it. Just to reiterate, the principal concern of staff is the relationship of the accessory building to the principal structure.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Whitehead. Anybody got any questions for Mr. Whitehead while he is there? Okay. Because staff are recommending that this application be denied, I would like to give the opportunity to Mr. Taylor to follow up with any comments or recommendations he desires.
I have a presentation, and could somebody operate the presentation?
We're just trying to get it pulled up here.
I have a USB stick with it if it's... That would be great. Yeah, it's on the screen. It's on the screen.
It's been getting a lot different than it used to be. There you go.
All right. Thank you, Your Worship, members of council, members of staff, and the public. Basically, I wanted to just let you know, most of you know already, my name is Gabe Taylor. I've been a resident of Revelstoke for just over 10 years and happen to be an engineer that operates a home-based business providing project management services to owners undertaking development and construction projects. I recognize this has been a long, difficult process for all of us, but I'm here today hoping that our heritage alteration permit for constructing this garage at our property containing our primary residence will be approved. We purchased the house in 2009 because it was a good fit, among other reasons, particularly due to its function as a corner lot, coupled with the fact that it had a two-vehicle carport and shop, and it still does, which have been extremely valuable assets over the years. The Heritage Conservation Area boundary is at the back lane of our property, immediately adjacent to our garage. In planning our future, it became clear to my wife and I that with our desire to start a family and the stability of my business, not only would it make sense to remain in Revelstoke, but we should move my office out of our residence. With improvements needed on the garage, there appeared to be an opportunity to combine the two goals. Last year, we applied for our first HAP that would have seen us utilize the footprint of our existing structure, which you can see at the front, adjacent to Orton Street, or the side street rather, to construct a new two-car garage and shop with a second floor office space, and it was defeated by 4 of the 6 councillors at the staff and 4 of the 6 councillors at the last public hearing that was brought forward with. Where we were advised to make improvements to our design that addressed the following concerns: roof pitch, roof overhangs, windows and door styles, character, and its general size and mass. Of course, this defeat was a great disappointment, but we are grateful that the feedback helped us push the limits of our development further to create a superior solution that not only meets our needs, but does so in style with greater attention to heritage-sensitive elements. So our new design would not only address the specific concerns raised by staff, but also reduce the number and the extent of variances applied for. This came at a great cost as we lost our rear yard, though this was more than offset by the substantial improvements. Our second HAP addressing these initial concerns was then submitted with the following modifications. As you can see, the garage is moved as far as possible away from the side street, Orton Avenue, thereby providing the required vision clearance triangle and the side street setback. With the garage behind the house, the property frontage is better preserved. The footprint and site coverage have been further reduced, and the rear lane setback encroachment has also been reduced from 2 feet to 1 foot. We got an error. Okay. So the roof pitch has been steepened from a 612 to a 912 to closer match that of the principal residence 1012. This minor difference is undetectable, particularly as both pitch profiles would not be visible within the same sight line. The roof overhangs have been reduced to match the house, and to reduce and minimize the impact of the second story and the overall height of the structure, we did the following. We moved the structure as far as possible away from the side street, as mentioned, shortened the second story pony walls from 4 feet to 2.5 feet, reducing the overall height from 1.75 to 1.65 stories, and we reduced the width of the garage by 2 feet. In fact, the garage is only about 2.5 feet taller than this garage would be as a single story. The windows and doors have been modified to better match the house, and I need to bring attention to the recent update we have made to delete the balcony roof, which we subsequently felt was not complementary from a heritage perspective. So the variances that are requested are limited to 1 foot for the rear lane setback encroachment, which as we understand it, staff are not that concerned about, and secondly, the second story on the auxiliary building. As you know, there are several instances of each of these variances having been offered around the city of Revelstoke. Two-story accessory buildings have been a hot topic in municipalities in our region, including Revelstoke and across the province. Two-story accessory building, the zoning bylaw does not currently permit accessory buildings with a second story, though if it did, new bylaws would be required to regulate their development. This is challenging for owners and developers who do not have clear targets that they may achieve. Having said that, our design calls for a 797 square foot footprint, which is well under the current zoning bylaw accessory building maximum single-story floor area of 864 square feet. Though our house has a humble heritage score of 47 out of 100, with a previously performed addition and its updated siding that do not enhance its heritage value, the house already has significant heritage value to us. The first thing we did when we purchased it was to renovate the interior to meet the current building code and to restore the flooring, moldings, and stair railings, which required specialist trades and tools. So we are genuinely enthusiastic to develop a tasteful heritage-sensitive property that will also accomplish our goals, though the process has not been without its challenges. While we completely agree with the intent of the OCP to protect our neighborhood from ramshackle development, it is out of date. Houses that met the needs of homeowners in Revelstoke in 1910 do not meet the needs of homeowners in 2018. Urban density is a large topic that is also a contemporary issue for Revelstoke. With limited area for growth and the intensified demand for housing, density will need to be increased. For affordability, today's families often require secondary suites to provide supplemental income to support relatively large mortgages. Many family members work from home to live in remote locations and improve their quality of life. And many families also now have 2 or more vehicles. An increased density in urban areas has also brought a need for increased parking, ideally off-street. As you can understand, our family has these same needs, which is why, as has been done before, and here are a few good examples of tasteful 2-story accessory buildings within our heritage district with a similar scale of subordination. We are attempting to address our 21st century needs by using them to inform our project requirements while maintaining compatibility with the heritage aspects of our neighborhood and the community. Following the comments by staff and the Heritage Advisory Commission, it became evident that in addition to our architect, other professionals were required to provide impartial third-party reviews and guidance. We retain the services of respected heritage preservation specialist consultant Robert Inwood, who has worked for the city before, who now lives in Nelson, and Revelstoke's own respected planner, Fraser Blake. These accomplished consultants, both of whom are extremely familiar with Revelstoke, have sought to understand our project, review its history and key elements, visit our property, and summarize their independent findings and reporting that has been provided to council. In each case, the specialist endorsed our application and recommended its approval. Fraser found that our proposal addressed a modern need for parking and home office space while contributing to the enhancement of the Revelstoke heritage area and the overall quality of the public realm. Robert found this to be a thoughtfully developed proposal that has addressed and remediated the city's residential heritage design concerns in a successful manner. Not only that, but he went on to say, if a precedent is to be set, this would be a good example of sympathetically integrated heritage design. It's also important to realize that this is just the first step in our plan to complete a heritage revitalization for our residents and property. Improvements will be made to the frontage, siding, trims, landscaping, and more, incorporating features that will also improve our low heritage score. The new garage project is just the obvious first step, and it will support these future enhancements to develop what will become a unified and valuable integrated heritage property. Nothing is lost by this development, only gained, particularly when compared with what is there currently. This project would provide many tangible benefits to the neighborhood and the community. Though I know our focus is on particular development, we also can recognize that on a community scale, there will be injection of development funding to local goods and services suppliers and potential of long-term increased density. On a neighborhood scale, heritage value beautification and restoration, general aesthetic improvement and satisfaction, property value increases, and increased off-street parking. Our backyard neighbor, the Martins, have provided their support for our application. The city and the developments within it need to support and guide the changing needs of this community. As mentioned, the homes that supported the families of 1910 are going to look different than the homes that support the families of 2018. While heritage, form, and character are critical and need to be maintained, the structure and shape of these homes is going to evolve. We wish to establish our property as a precedent-setting example of functional renovation that considers key aspects of thoughtful heritage revitalization we can be proud of. We trust that you will recognize this, along with our willingness and enthusiasm to make this improvement to our property, to our neighborhood, and to our community. Thank you for hearing us out, and I'd also be happy to answer any questions.
I want to put a motion on the floor and then start discussion. And if we have any questions for Mr. Taylor or Mr. Whitehead, we can deal with that then. So there is a recommended motion. Who would like to put a motion on the floor? Councilor Duke.
Not me to direct wording of the recommended motion. I'm going to put a motion that the application of the HAP would be approved.
Motion to approve. Is there a seconder? Councilor Nixon would you like to second that? Discussion on the motion.
I'm going to support the motion as Councillor Duke has made. I think that this is a great example of coming to council, being denied, going back, continuing to work on a project that will meet the needs. The most important piece of this to me is the letter from the neighbor across the alley. That means everything to me. It's fully supported in the neighborhood. I think that the proponent has done a great job reworking his application. Also, the other submittals that I was able to really makes it apparent to me that this is something that I want to support, and I will be supporting Scott's motion.
Your Worship, thank you. I too will support this motion. I believe this is a great project for the neighborhood. Had this home been on the other side of the alley, that wouldn't have come to us under this application as a heritage alteration permit, maybe just a variance permit, and probably been put through the first time. So I think this is a great quality project. It's taking an area of town and enlightening, and it's also saying to our residents that you can go away after being denied and come up with something that's still workable, and we're going to hear you. So.
Your Worship, just a question for staff, because I think this is going to set a precedent, and it's something that I'm in favor of, is that the heritage area, when you're on the street, you look at the heritage building and you preserve that building. But if you're on the avenues where everybody's got these awful garages that are like 40 years old or more, what is the carrying capacity for the sewer lines in this neighborhood? I understand there was a study just done. Do we have any idea of what that shows yet? Will we be getting a report back on that?
Mike?
Your Worship, we'll have an idea of some of the sewer main capacity coming up here, but not for the whole of downtown. That is a future exercise. What we're focusing on right now is work that's immediately around the roundabout area by 4th and Townley. Some of the sewer flows that way, some of it flows the other way. I have to look. I actually think this one flows the other way towards Mackenzie. So I don't think this area is specifically being looked at.
Okay.
I'm assuming we know what the size of the pipes going up and down the streets that would give us an idea of the capacity that it could handle.
Your Worship, capacity is one thing, the age and condition of the existing assets is another. We have a lot of clay pipe in the alleys, and some of it is up to 100 years old.
Yeah. But regardless of the size of the pipe, if it's poor condition, needs to be replaced. That's kind of a separate issue from what Councilor Nixon was talking about, where she's getting concerned about more development like this happening and creating more capacity in that immediate area. I understand about the 100 or whatever year old pipe and clay and all that falling apart. But
Your Worship, the challenge with an old pipe is the more sewage you put through it, the more likely it is to fail. So I think there is a bit of a concern there. I wouldn't want to tie it directly to one application. I think it's much more, looking forward is something that we definitely do have to put some effort into review.
A question for Mr. Whitehead is that, so right now, the only variance that is being talked about is a 1-foot rear yard setback. Is that correct?
Your worship, no, there would also be a second story on an accessory building.
Okay.
And a height variance, then that would go along with that structure.
Because I am in favor of the motion to approve. I think that when you look at the proposal today compared to the proposal that we turned down previously, I think it enforces that it was the right decision because this is a better project. It's a better match. It's a good, sympathetic addition to the area as far as heritage is concerned. We've all talked around this table about how we can take opportunities to increase density, whether it's for an office or a secondary suite. And I guess the comment that Mr. Taylor made is exactly what I've been thinking about since this application came back again, was the fact that, 1910 houses don't necessarily work for 2018 families. And I can see that this is, all in all, I think it's going to be a better addition to the community. It's going to go against some recommendations that we've had. But I think that we still have to look at what is the end result and what are we going to be getting instead of if we turn it down and end up with nothing or end up with the existing, are we better off? And I have to say that I don't believe that we would be better off. I think we're better off putting this through. I think that staff have made a lot of recommendations to Mr. Taylor. He's taken those into consideration, and it's the project that we see now. So I am happy to support this moving forward. Councilor Randall.
Yeah, Your Worship. Your Worship, I'm going to speak against the motion. I agree with the value statements made both in city staff, the city staff report, as well as in the proponent's reports and the presentation that he made before us today. In general, what I've seen staff do a lot of in the past few months is seek to find a solution with the proponent. We've seen a lot of creative solutions, a lot of variances, a lot of effort to get to the finish line and work with applicants to find something that's acceptable. When I read the staff report, I think it can be boiled down to the main concern is the massing, the size of this addition. Like everyone else, I'd like to see lots of additions, lots of carriage suites, secondary suites out back, all those kinds of things. But it comes clearly that we could have both of those things before us right now. What it comes down to is when you walk in and talk to staff and say, here's what I want to do, they're going to say, go for it, here's my ideas, but here are the deal breakers, I can't move past this. So we have what is outlined in the report is an oversized garage, as well as a second story. I have a feeling, I haven't talked to staff about it, but I have a feeling that they would accept this application if these main concerns were dealt with, and that it's just not so big. Like as you can see from looking at the images presented, it takes up the backyard and the entire backyard. So to reiterate, I think there's a solution where, for example, the Heritage Advisory Committee, the rules in our heritage rules, as well as the values that are in those heritage rules are preserved, as well as being able to create more housing or create a workspace on the second floor. The report also mentions the possibilities of this being secondary suite or bed and breakfast in the future. But what I think the issue we get into is, we're undermining staff if they don't have the ability to say, hey, we can work with you. Their opposition is not a blanket opposition. Their opposition is on some specific points here. And if any applicant says, okay, these are my constraints, this is what I can do, this is what I can put to my designers, this is my limitations, then we could have something that would be acceptable to them before us. I'm speaking specifically to this application, but I also have a concern that, as everybody is well aware of, is our number one concern is we have a lot of delays, a lot of issues with the building season coming up. And I am concerned that, number one, if you look down Orton Avenue from 7th all the way downtown, there's a dozen of these old garages there that are in bad shape and need something done with them. And we're sort of opening up a Pandora's box, in my opinion, where we're going to have many other applicants who are going to come through the front door of the planning department and say, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to take this for a political decision, and that undercuts what we need to, are the rules and the processes that are in place. Some solutions at this point, I think, would be simply to make it smaller, or hopefully the longer term greater solution is updates to the OCP, updates to the zoning bylaw that would systemically address the issues and be able to allow for these types of accessory buildings that would meet the values that I think everyone shares in common here. So I can't support it at this thing. I think the best way forward with this would have been to work more closely with staff, listen to their concerns, and come forward with a proposal that matched their concerns and have a win-win situation where, the values and the rules that we as a community have put in place and that the heritage community respects and everybody wants to see preserved are achieved, as well as the applicant's needs are also achieved. So to me, I really see the solution there is 3 steps back, saying, okay, this is what they're saying I can do. I bet you I can put that together. Thank you.
Your Worship, I get the sense Council wants to move this application forward, and I think that the motion as moved needs amended or expanded. Because of the required variances, the motion was to approve the application. It would be to approve the application and give notice of Council's intention to consider the issuance of the heritage alteration permit that would include whatever variances this application as written entails. And notice would then be given, and this would come back to Council for the decision after that notice has been provided. So if that's okay with the mover and the seconder,
Yes.
That's okay.
staff can incorporate that into the appropriate version.
Thank you.
So we have an expanded motion now to include the variances and then approve the heritage application permit. Is there any more discussion on this motion? All those in favor? Against? Motion carried. Councillor Orlando voted against. Thank you. We now have a heritage application, alteration permit application for 421 3rd Street East, and we have a presentation, Mr. Whitehead. That's yours.
What are we on, Your Worship?
3rd Street.
1703.
421 3rd
Yeah, 429, 2017-03.
Thank you, Your Worship. This application is for a major renovation of a single-family dwelling at the corner of Vernon and 3rd Street East. It is a corner double lot. Unfortunately, we don't have a side view of the Google Street View, but if some councillors may have been out for a tour, there's a very unsympathetic addition, one-story addition on the rear of this building. Looks to have been done probably in the late 50s, mid-60s, somewhere around there. get a drawing of the application. So this would be the front view from Vernon, from 3rd. And this is the side facing Vernon here. This building is unique in that it's got a shed roof facing the front of the building. Most of our buildings have a gable front end. There you can see the shed. There were 2 gables originally, likely original, over these windows, which the applicant is proposing to replace. The proposed design is great for a corner lot. It's reflective of the building form found on a number of larger corner properties within the Heritage District, which is this kind of T shape where you've got the one across the one street and then a long T down the side street. I think I just lost my pointer. And then an additional gable on the side. The applicant was receptive to some feedback at the Heritage Advisory Commission and will be revising their drawings to create one single roof ridge. Oh, we must be losing the batteries here. You can see right here on the roof ridge as currently designed, there's a bit of a misalignment due to the way they are rebuilding the rear, utilizing the existing foundation. The designers come up with a solution for that, and they'll be able to revise that, and that's reflected in the council resolution today. Council support of the recommended resolutions would allow for issuance of this HAP as there's no variances required upon receipt of revised drawings with the unifying main roof ridgeline. That's all.
Great. I can bring forward 11C. The application HAP 2017-03 be approved, and that the final issuance of HAP 2017-03 be withheld until revised drawings are submitted that show a continuous main roof ridge.
Motion by Councillor Duke, second by Councillor Nixon. Discussion on the motion.
I'm just really excited to see this. I make this right to take my daughter to school and band all the time. This is really going to be fantastic.
I could tell that you were excited.
I'm excited.
Any other comments or questions on the motion? All in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. And we have a presentation on Heritage Alteration Permit application for 410 5th Street East. Mr. Whitehead.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a Heritage Alteration Permit application located at 410 5th Street East. The proposal is to replace another unsympathetic building, carport, 2-vehicle carport with a single, and replace it with a single vehicle garage with some workspace at the rear of the garage. The applicant will be utilizing the existing foundation for the 2-story carport. You can see here that the building sits out about 3 feet from the front face of the building, which is what one of the variances is for. And there's what's existing, there's the proposal. This is an example here of an accessory building where its massing is clearly subordinate and complementary to the principal building. 2 relatively minor variances are required for the proposal. One that I mentioned to locate the accessory structure partially in front of the principal dwelling, and another to allow a variance of 0.1 meters, so 10 centimeters, to legalize the existing location of the foundation wall here on this side of the building. Staff are supportive of the proposed development. Council approval of the recommendations today will accept the application and direct staff to distribute notice of the intended variances to the neighbors.
Great. I can bring forward that motion as well, Your Worship. That application for HAP 2018-01 be approved and council give notice of its intention to consider the issuance of HAP 2018-01, including variances to the following sections of zoning bylaw 1264, to locate an accessory building partially in front of the principal building to reduce the minimum side yard setback of accessory structure from 1 year to 29 years.
Motion by Councilor Duke, seconded by Councilor Nixon. Discussion on the motion. Comments, questions? All in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. And we're down to OCP amendment application, 908 Douglas Street. And you have a presentation for that, Mr. Whiteman.
Just a quick one, quickest yet. We can get this thing calmed down here. We're really pushing the limits of the computing power here, I think. Thank you, Your Worship. This is a proposed OCP, the zoning amendment for a property located on the corner of Douglas and Charles Streets. Here's where we all make the turn here from Douglas to Charles. The property appears to have once been part of the old Central Motel development, which are these bungalows here, and currently shares the same zoning and OCP designation for it. Our best guess is that this was once used for on-site office or security or caretaker of some sort. Since that time, a couple have purchased the property and are using it as a standard residential home. You can see the home here on the front. However, due to the legal non-conforming status of the structure, they're not able to do any structural renovations or alterations to the building. So therefore, we're bringing forward this application to legalize the current residential use, to allow future renovations to occur. Staff are supportive of the proposal. The variance is to go from T4O, which is neighborhood mixed use, to T4 walk-up residential, and to amend the zoning bylaw from C5 tourist commercial to R2 single and two-family residential.
Motion by Councilor Duke, seconded by Councilor Nixon. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor? Motion carried.
Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 2226 begins first reading.
By Councilor Duke, seconded by Councilor Orlando. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? Motion carried.
E3, that council determine the opportunities for consultation with persons, organizations, and authorities that are considered to be affected by the proposed amendment to the official community plan and as described in the report to be appropriate to meet the requirements of Section 475 of the Local Government Act and determine that the level of consultation detailed in the report be sufficient.
Motion by Councilor Duke, seconded by Councilor Nixon. Discussion on the motion. Just determine the opportunities for consultation with persons. Is that something, like, I don't recall reading that.
Through your worship, this is to cover our bases to ensure we're complying with the Local Government Act. As far as amendments to OCPs require council to consider, because it is a greater community document, to consider all opportunities for applicants. Because it's a minor application, a minor amendment, we consider the public notification to be sufficient, and that's our recommendation to council to consider that. If we were going to be doing a large portion, say a full chapter of the OCP, then we'd be referring it out, we'd be holding other public meetings, and that would be our obligation under that section of the Local Government Act.
Comments or questions on the motion? All those in favor? Motion carried.
E4, that council consider official community plan amendment bylaw number 2226 in conjunction with its financial plan and waste management plan to meet the requirements of Section 477 of the Local Government Act and consider it to be acceptable.
Motion by Councilor Duke, seconded by Councilor
1865.
Everybody going in favor? Darren?
That official community plan amendment bylaw number 2226 be given second reading and a public hearing be scheduled.
Motion by Councilor Duke, seconded by Councilor Sauls. Discussion. All those in favor? Motion carried.
6, that zoning amendment bylaw number 2227 be given first and second reading and a public hearing be scheduled.
Motion by Councilor Duke, seconded by Councilor Sauls. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor? Motion is carried. And now we're into development variance permit 2018-01 for Colbeck Road, 1867 Colbeck Road. And you have a presentation for that if everything is working.
Yeah, I'm going to try not to crash the thing.
We only have one more after this.
Your Worship, I have a conflict declaration. I'm not sure it was down there for F and G, both do business relationship with the applicant.
What I'm going to do, I think the problem is there's so much going on.
People can follow it on their iPad too. We all have.
1867 Colbeck Road. This application will permit a 20-foot by 34-foot addition with a 16-foot wall height on an existing accessory structure located at 1867 Colbeck Road. You can see this is a large property, roughly 2.6 acres, a single-family dwelling here, and there's an accessory building here that the proponent is proposing to add on to. This is a large property, as I said, of 2.6 acres. The proposal is reasonably proportionate to the size of the property. Unfortunately, it just has an R2 zone on it, or it must be R1, sorry. There's a rendering of the addition. So this is the addition right here. This is existing right now. The variance, due to the steep banks surrounding the edge of the property and location of the dwelling overlooking the river, the variance is supported to legalize the location of the existing accessory structure and to permit the addition. The variances proposed include allowing the height of the garage to exceed the height of the house and to allow the garage to be located in front of the dwelling. To increase the garage from 4 meters to 4.9 meters. And those are the three variances there. Approval of the resolutions today will direct staff to distribute notice of council's intent to consider the variance for issuance at a subsequent meeting.
Great. I can bring that motion forward. The development variance permit application number DVP 2018-01 from Peter Bernacki be approved and council give notice of their intention to consider the issuance of development variance permit number DVP 2018-01 for 1867 Colbeck Road to vary the following provisions as highlighted in the council agenda.
Those are the three provisions that were included in that motion. Motion by Councilor Duke, second by Councilor Nixon. Discussion. I have no problem with this. There's no neighbors. There never will be any neighbors, and it's not going to. I don't think it's going to affect anybody because of the way it's situated. I have no problem with this. Any other comments? Motion's on the floor. All those in favor? Motion's carried. And presentation now for 2017-06, 1911 Fraser Drive, Stoke Motel.
One more, Your Worship. Staff have been working with the applicants in their redevelopment of the old Canyon Motor Inn, now branded the Stoke Hotel. There's the original street view. Wonderful. And there's the proposal. Staff have been supportive of the exterior renovations and landscaping to date, and those have been approved under an internally approved minor development permit. However, this portico rebuild requires a variance, and therefore it's in front of council today. The next phase of the redevelopment, the applicant is proposing to reconstruct the portico. This will improve the aesthetics of the building, and it will also allow access to larger vehicles. Staff are supportive of the proposed variance and see it as a substantial improvement to a highly visible building. The proposed variance is for the front setback for the portico only, and is to vary down from 6 meter setback to 0.5 meters. That would be for those posts that you can see right here. So property lines are roughly where the light gray ends.
All right, I can bring this last one forward. That development variance permit application number DVP 2017-06 for Stoke Motel Inc. be approved, and that notice is given of council's intention to consider the issuance of development variance permit number DVP 2017-06 to vary the following section of zoning bylaw number 1264 to reduce the minimum front yard setback of a C4 zone from 6 meters to 0.5 meters.
Motion by Councilor Dave, second by Councilor Nixon. Discussion on the motion. Councilor Nixon.
Nice addition. Branding looks good.
I think the whole process of what that place has gone through is a nice addition. So, any comments on the motion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Somebody let our Councilor back in. Thank you, Mr. Raynet. We're into communications, and the first item is, does anybody want to do anything about the municipal regional district tax provincial approval notice? The item B, which is the Monashi Spirits Craft Distillery submission. Business license summary of April 2018. UBCM letter regarding asset management planning. I think it's talking about the $10,000 grant. And again, another UBCM letter of asset management planning program grant approval. I think that's for $15,000. So nice to see. Anything out of the advisory planning commission minutes of May 1st? Councilor Randall.
Your Worship, I had a question of staff. One of the items in the APC minutes asked regarding the cannabis bylaw. They asked for, just reading here, an expedited timeline for cannabis zoning regulation development once the federal regulations are in place. And number two, the 2018 municipal election. I guess my question is, everyone's loath to put a timeline on things, given how busy everyone is, but a possibility to do any ballparking around sequencing or timing as just stemming from their request.
Through your worship, yes, we're actively searching for a third-party consultant who could help us out with this small project, and so that will be dependent upon who we secure as a consultant and what their timelines are. If I was to hazard a guess today, right now, it would be a 2 to 3 month process, and then let's say another month to get a contract secured and get someone with the work.
Looking at how much animal control takes up a lot of time. Bylaw officers looking after that large dogs that are misbehaving.
I'd like to probably admonish those dog owners and this is really
I think I brought it up, Your Worship, because they think we should be out there spanking the people with vacation rentals, and we can't even get to them because of the dogs.
I did notice one on the loose after the thunderstorm yesterday, looking rather scared. Yeah, and our dog's done a runner a couple times, so thankfully we haven't required the services of by law enforcement, but it happens. But yeah, everyone, I'm sure, be on top of it.
Questions from media? Melissa, Sean, Dustin? Oh, count three, there are no questions.
You were really excited today, thank you.
Looking for a motion to go in camera pursuant to section 9.1 AAC, E and G Community Charter. English, Nixon, all in favor, motion is carried. We'll take a 10-minute break and then